Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Ray Tampa podcast. Our podcast offers bold commentary on various subject matters with a laser-like focus on the truth. My name is Ray Tampa, and I'm the host of the Ray Tampa podcast. We have in our studio Mr. Russell Cato, a retired educator with more than 40 plus years of experience in Pinellas County schools, and Mr. Jamie Wilson III, a healthcare provider with more than 25 years working as a physical therapist. My co-host, my dynamic co-host. We're extremely excited to have two of the most brilliant minds in the clergy, Pastor Dr. G. Greg Murray, Mount Zion Primitive Baptist Church, St. Petersburg, Florida, and Pastor Dr. MANUEL SYKES, Bethel Community Church, St. Petersburg, Florida, here with us today as our guests. The pastors are here to offer their comments about the lack of significant, and I mean significant, pushback on the dangerous and aggressive rhetoric of the white Evangelicans. On October 28th, 2024, Roland Martin played a clip on his show where evangelist Donnie Swaggart said, quote, ... when the largest African-American Pentecostal stands up and says, I endorse that woman. He was saying, I endorse murder. I endorse homosexuality. I endorse lesbianism. I endorse transgenderism. I endorse every evil that hell could bring up. That's wrong, folks. He continued by saying, the Black church votes predominantly for the party that is anti-God. On the 21st of August, 2024, the Roy's reporter Liz Likens wrote, quote, Landon Schott, senior pastor at Multi-Campus Mercy Cultures Church in Dallas-Fort Worth area, made this statement. He said, quote, I've been asked over and over again, Pastor, are you saying you're not a Christian if you vote for a Democrat? He went on to say, let me be clear. That is correct. He went on to state, you're not a Bible-believing Christian, a Jesus-following Christian, if you support the godless Romans 1 evil of the Democratic Party. End of quote. Greg Locke is supposedly a Christian pastor in Tennessee. On May 20th, 2022, LeBron Hill of the Tennessean published an article about this gentleman that is very disturbing on various levels. A clip was revealed of him spewing hatred, lots of hatred, that is subsidized by the government. He railed during a service, quote, I am to the place that if you vote Democrat, I don't want you around here. You get out of here. You get out, you demon. You baby butchering election thief. You cannot be a Christian and vote Democrat in this nation. They are good, they are God-denying demons. God-denying demons. End of quote. And there are so many others like these individuals. However, this is only a 30-minute show. Pastor Murray, your thoughts on the subject.
Well, first, it's good to be here, sitting next to my brother, Dr. Sykes, who I love as a brother and respect as a colleague, and with you gentlemen. And that was quite a lead-in, Ray. It was kind of bewildering that you was describing what white evangelicals are like. I guess they call themselves evangelicals, which means they evangelize Christ. But not that I was looking for it because I already know what it really is, but there was nothing to me that resembles the Christ in the Gospels. What I heard and what I continue to hear from so-called white evangelical Christians is hate, racism, misogynism, sexism, and of homophobic rhetoric, anti-Semitic rhetoric. So I'm just confused of who they really consider themselves to be. If they consider themselves to be Christian, then they ought to go back and probably read on the life of Jesus Christ, which is the one that they claim to emulate. It's strange to me because I didn't recognize who you were talking about.
Great. Awesome. Pastor Sykes, what you have to say?
Well, once again, like Pastor Murray, I'm glad to be here with all of you and him, my brother and colleague in Christ. I agree. The word evangelism or evangelicalism or all of its derivatives comes from a Greek word that says to spread good news. There's nothing good about the news they spread. It is a message of hate. When you look at what they have attempted to do, they've tried to set the narrative based upon what they have carved out in scripture as pet sins. Well, the Bible tells us, for God so loved the world. Jesus died for the world, not for the whites, not for the evangelicals. That is our message. That's the content of what we should be saying. But what's interesting now is this. We talk about the Democratic Party, we talk about the Republican Party, we talk about the black voters group. All of those things supposedly be areas where you can gauge an election. But here you're talking about a party of evangelical. They are now a massive voting bloc. And evangelicals make up between 22 and 27% of the population. That's the population of the United States. Trump received 85% of their support, along with some Muslims as well as some Latinos. Latinos say that they are not really, it's not religious for them, it's economic. Muslims say it's based upon the Israeli Gaza stance of Joe Biden. But the bottom line is they have all formulated now a large political bloc that can usher in the election based upon whoever can use the right buzzwords to get them in a froth. And so when you talk abortion, you talk all those things. You talk about pro-life versus pro-choice. You talk about persons' right to consider themselves by whatever sexual identity they choose. All of those things, they have become buzzwords now that will cause a group of so-called Christians to overlook the vile rhetoric, personality, behavior of a presidential candidate, and to basically impose that whole idea of sinfulness, of darkness, of demonic onto a cabinet or a party of people simply because they don't agree with you. That's the kind of thing that we're seeing now. This is a racist right voting bloc that the hook, the bait is primarily their own religious fears, homophobia, as Pastor Murray said, misogynistic, xenophobia, all of those isms that have divided America over the years. And that has risen to a place of violence, not just vitriol, not just words, but actions. If you look on television today, you see football teams and everybody's cheering for their favorite team and they're dressing like them and, and they jabbering back and forth at each other and then they're taking selfies together. If they can do that with beer at a game, how in the world can people who claim themselves to be God-fearing people rise such a level of hatred as we see right now? Pastors telling who should and should not be in their church. It has really descended. The underbelly of America has turned completely upward now. Everything that we are is beginning to show.
Well, Pastor, what I want to ask, I certainly appreciate what the two of you have said so far. I really do. But where is the pushback on what these people are saying? I know for a fact, as I mentioned in my opening statement, there are so many others like the ones that I quoted. But where are we getting pushback on this? Where are we getting people such as yourself, what you've said, where is that on a national level, state level, what have you? Pushback. Because if these racists, these evangelical weirdos are constantly spewing hate, dangerous hate, where is the pushback? Because if they can get away with it, they control the narrative. And if the narrative is constantly their narrative, no matter how much we dislike it, then that's the narrative that is dominating the airwaves and creating more support for them. Where's the pushback?
Pushback, Brother Ray, is the truth. And that rises each and every time. Just wait a little while, and you'll see the truth continue to rise. Persons like myself and Dr. Sykes, every Sunday we don our pulpit with the truth, which is the light. That's going to rise every time, my brother. I don't get into the point of argument and debating something I know what truth is. So I just lay back and let truth speak for itself.
And I can agree with, I was going to show you our sign, the RHETORIC. Well, it's here. I pledge allegiance to the truth.
There it is.
The truth
There it
is exactly what rises to the top, as you said. What you got, Russ?
And I'm glad that you're saying that, but here's what I'm looking at with Trump. The xenophobic stuff. You're also right about the truth, but Trump is able to take the truth
Yes.
and turn it around and make it a different scenario. And people believe that. For instance, one of the strongest myths today is that this country was developed through Christianity. The faith of this country, the foundation is Christianity. The fathers and things like that.
That's not true.
Yeah, that is not true. That is not true. But if I can convince people, back to what Ray said, controlling the narrative. See, that's what this thing is all about.
Right.
These are the people that control the narrative. And if you can't control the narrative, how can we fight this thing?
I think that, when we talk about narrative,
Yeah.
in order for someone to speak and be heard, the other
Right.
party has to be quiet and listen,
Right.
or be quiet and not, respond. In terms of the church, the Black preachers,
Mhm.
I think that they have not spoken up enough. They have not organized enough.
Right.
Yes, we've had one or two persons from a national platform to get up,
That's what I do.
but kind of like, and I love Michelle Obama, but they say when you go low, we go high. That mentality is what allows that kind of narrative.
Yeah.
Satan has no bottom. There's nothing he will not do to win. You follow? So we have to learn how, as Pastor says, speak the truth. But I go a step further and say, speak truth to power.
Yes.
You follow what I'm saying? We have to stand up in the places and in front of the people who are espousing, embracing, and telling these lies. I mean, they literally had lie meters
Right.
on Trump his first term. By the time his third year, he had told 10,000 lies.
Yeah, they were counting them. You're right.
So there's no absence of data and fact that he's a bold-faced liar. He does not have to turn the truth into a lie. He mixes his own world up. What he's been able to do is to bring people into his world based upon the bait that he's giving them, giving Christians an opportunity to hate something, and they demonize something else. You know, it's the Arabs, it's the Chinks, it's the Japs, it's the niggers. They demonize you, and then suddenly they can get this religious, this kind of self-righteous indignation. America is a bloodthirsty country. From the time whites stepped their foot on these shores, they have been bloodthirsty, rapists, villains, and thieves. They have killed the very people who saved them in the first year of their existence and annihilated millions. There's no way in hell America can ever say, in God we trust. No, it's been in arms and in violence we trust. And it has gone on both naturally so and in a dialogue. They're doing violence. There's such a thing as violence when it comes down to the thinking of people. To try to force a narrative is intellectual violence. To try to shut up history books and to determine what they want us to know and to believe. That's intellectual academic violence. And those of us who understand that have to be willing to offend our white Christian brothers and so forth. We got to be willing to offend them.
Right.
But as long as we got a couple of people that we love, we respect, that we know that we're different, we quiet ourselves down. They literally ostracize us to the extent that they will break ranks. I remember a television producer and evangelist that T.D. Jakes was close to. He died from COVID, and he was an avid a proponent against taking the shot. And T.D. Jakes kind of intimated how their relationship had come apart based upon that whole idea of the shot versus this is the government, this is the, all these terms that are designed to, as I say, be dog whistles. He broke relationships with them, but it was not anything public. You see, the only relationships that we show is when the Martin Luther King and the National Baptists break up. It's a big thing. You see, but we don't break up with them.
Right.
But that God knows they'll break up with us. Because again, they have the numeric power, they have the financial power. But as Pastor Murray said, the truth has to rise again. And I'm one that believes that you speak the truth consistently. The Bible says, cry loud, spare not, lift up your voice like a trumpet. And that's what we do. And if the big dogs that's getting all of the millions of dollars and all the television time supposed to be the black, leaders, fine, do you. But with whatever platform and opportunity I have, they're going to hear my thoughts. See, I'm not torn apart the line.
Exactly.
But at the same time as you speak, like you said, and your Christian brothers do not accept you on what you say, how do you get around that?
I don't think you get around it. I think you go through it.
Okay.
Here's what I've learned. That either you serve people or you serve a purpose.
Right.
You've got to decide.
Right.
And when the time comes that your purpose that you're serving for God goes against the grain of people you're trying to serve, then there's a choice to be made. I'm not here for people. And I have never, ever been so self-deceived as to believe that all Christians, all, especially Black preachers, are going to work together. They just don't do that. And whites know that.
Know it.
And they exploit it.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to breaking rank with people who I know, I respectfully disagree. And if you want to, get nasty with it, then within my own range of nastiness,
Mm-hmm.
I may not match yours, but I'm gonna certainly let you know just how I feel
Right.
about the way in which you've treated me as a result of my disagreement. But please don't be mistaken. Some of us are just not gonna sit there and be quiet. Some of us are not gonna pull out the Kleenex just because somebody walked away from me that disagree. Black, white, whatever group they're
Exactly.
part of.
Exactly.
Because we're living on principle here,
Mhm.
you see. And then if your principles are flexible,
Go on.
you see.
If your principles flexible, so is your religion. Your religion flexible.
Yeah.
If you're going to be weak, but I also feel like to speak to as far as we don't have true national leaders like we do. I know when I was younger, you had Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, and all those. They found a way to quiet them up. I don't see them in the forefront or being taken seriously by anybody nationally. And I think that's part of the problem, that we need people need to do their work in their churches, in their state, but nationally, we need someone, and they know that. And just like you were saying earlier, that how even with the Black preachers, there's some division on issues. They see that, you know what I mean? And that's part of the problem as well. We're not coming together on these issues, and some are just afraid to speak. It's straight up cowards, in other words.
Well, I want to go to this point here. Pastor Murray and I were talking, and he shared with me a belief that we have about 175 pastors, Black, in St. Petersburg, 175 pastors. Am I correct? With that number or close?
75 churches, yes, at least.
Okay. And of that 175, the overwhelming majority of those pastors are not seminary trained. They're not seminary trained, meaning they haven't gone through the educational rituals in terms of Bible verses and understanding. So I suggested that maybe, just maybe, because they know there are people such as these two gentlemen who are highly trained in terms of seminary education, and some others, there's an inferiority complex on the part of some of those other pastors. And as a result of that, maybe that's why they're not stepping out, speaking out, showing up, and doing what's necessary in this community. Supposedly, that could be a reason.
Well, before I ever got out of elementary school, I had a mother that told me, you look people in the eye and you tell them what you mean. So that came before the education.
Mm.
I will say that my education in what would be considered liberal schools, well, no, I take that back. Luther Rice was evangelical. I was one of the only two flies in the milk the entire time I was in that seminary. And then I went on to Drew University, which was a liberal Methodist college for graduate work, but I also went to St. Thomas University, which was Catholic, during Vatican II, where you had this whole idea of liberation theology. I said all that to say this. It challenges and it expands your thinking.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a PhD to think critically. You follow what I'm saying? You can simply come to the place where you think and you don't just respond to what you've heard. You know, black preachers, when they couldn't read, they listened outside the windows and they would listen to the stories told by white pastors, and they would turn around and use their storytelling and their vocal abilities to entertain as well as teach and inspire the slaves. But the theological content was, of course, inferior because you didn't hear white men and they're talking about let my people go in the context that the black minister said it. So what happens when a man or woman has not been able to really go and participate in the academic enterprise? They can only mimic what they know, what they've heard, and hopefully have something on the inside that causes them to reinterpret at least part of it. But we don't have a lot of that going on.
That's the point. We don't have a lot of that going on. Pastor, you want to say something?
Certainly. Formal education has its place, certainly in the world of religion.
Pull the mic closer to you.
Yes. Formal education has its place in the religious arena. But I think even more so, what is more important than even formal education is an awareness of self. And that is what I think is lacking with a lot of the so-called black preachers, the Negro preachers, which dates back to the slave days when they allowed us to have a little religious gathering on Sunday. They had a preacher, of course, that couldn't read. He was given the Bible and basically verbally told what the gospel said. And he tried to reiterate that to the people. But what he was used mostly more than something to religiously educate people theologically was just to keep the slave into a slave mentality as slaves. And so to me, that's more damaging than someone who is not formally educated. But what are you actually teaching the people? Are you teaching them to be empowered, or are you teaching them to stay just as they are, in the shape that they are? And that's why you had two things that were allowed in the black community: liquor stores and churches, because one drunk make the people drink themselves into oblivion with alcohol, and then religiously receive themselves into religious oblivion and forget who they actually are.
Interesting point.
That's
Interesting
absolutely
point.
right. Absolutely right.
Liquor stores and churches.
Liquor stores and churches.
And they both make us drunk to death that we forget who we are, and we just inebriated, and people can control us that way.
Karl Marx said that religion is the opiate of the people. That is just without, I mean, it has gone through so many mutations, but the truth is still the truth. And notice, however, while religion is used to keep us, as you say, in oblivion, religion is being used to cause white evangelicals and some Hispanics and some blacks to become extremely motivated to do what they call setting our country free. Imagine the flip, which was once, what's keeping us down is empowering them to believe that God wants them to do what they're doing, and they're telling us God wants us to do what they think we should be doing.
But they're so organized
For sure.
in their efforts to control the mindset of the people, spewing this hatred and all this other nonsense. They're organized because if it's being done in the Northeast and Northwest, Southwest and the Southeast, the Midwest, they're organized, the white evangelicals. So at this point, I have to say to the gentleman here, Doctor, thanks again. Thanks again. You two are always superior in your presentations. I want to thank my two co-hosts for another job well done. We want to thank our listening audience for tuning in to the Ray Tampa Podcast, 99.1 FM The Bird, and ask that you do so each and every Tuesday, 5:30 p.m. And you can also go to YouTube, type in the Ray Tampa Podcast, and you can see them all. And with all that being said, good evening.